right, good morning, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well. Happy Medical Laboratory Professionals Week from the team here at Farminpex, and welcome to our webinar. So again, thank you for joining us in the continuation of our presentations for Medical Laboratory Professionals Week in recognition of you, the unsung heroes. My name is Takia Daniel, and I am the Client Success Officer here at Farminpex, hailing from the beautiful Isle of Trinidad and Tobago. So as a past medical laboratory professional myself, I understand how dynamic and how fast-paced our environments can be. Oftentimes, this means that we happily put the needs of patients before our own. From yesterday's session, we explored balancing career growth with the focus of maintaining balance on our internal wellness. From separating time for friends, investing in hobbies, and even having persons around us to keep us accountable, we learned the importance of simply just doing. Today, we continue the series with the topic From Burnout to Brilliance, Strategies to Recharge and Refocus. With that being said, I'm happy to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Jose Melissa Davy, hailing from the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So she's a dedicated medical professional with a deep passion for health, leadership, and community care. Dr. Davy earned her medical degree from the Carlos J. Finley Institute in Cuba and later completed a master's in infectology and tropical medicine at the Pedro Curie Institute in Havana. A passionate advocate for lifelong learning and leadership, she has received advanced training through the UE Caribbean Leadership Institute, the U.S. Department of State Visitor Leadership Program on women's health issues, and a health leadership program in Taiwan. She's also a certified aviation medical examiner through the King's College in London. Dr. Davy is the owner of Better Health Center, the host of the 360 Wellness, a radio show on Praise FM, and the author of Life Knows, a book of quotes. She is the founder of the Jose and Daisy Davy Foundation and proudly serves as a United Nations designated physician. With a wealth of experience and unwavering commitment to health and wellness, Dr. Davy brings a unique and inspiring perspective to today's discussion. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Jose Melissa Davy.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Well, Miss Daniel, I guess you'd have to give me a show of hands.
Yes.
Okay, great. And it's very important for us. Well, first of all, I want to thank the host, the Farminpex, and all of my friends there in Curacao, and now you in Trinidad, and I'm sure we have partners all over. So this is a very important topic for us, the Inner Lab, and this week. So today, lots of technical difficulties, but we're here as part of over. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we get right into today's presentation without any ado. If you're seeing my screen, just say woo-hoo, and I guess you are, you should be. So today we're going to talk about From Burnout to Brilliance. I'm going to tell you all about the strategies that you need to recharge and refocus. My introduction was already done, so I'm not going to tell you about who I am, but if you have questions about that after, I'll be happy to tell you. So, it has economic impact to the tune of $190 billion a year in the US economy. And there's a 48% higher turnover. So what happens is that people get into the career and they don't like it because they're burnout and they leave. So this is why it's important to talk about this topic. So how do we define burnout? Firstly, there's emotional exhaustion. And this is where someone feels depleted, they're drained, they're unable to recover their energies even after having rested. There's also depersonalization, where persons develop cynical attitudes towards their work and their colleagues and those they serve. There's reduced accomplishment. They feel as if I'm not really getting anything from any of this. So there's a decreased competence. And it's like, why do I even bother to go to work? And this is a slide that shows some of the different arenas where we're comparing healthcare, education, technology, finance, and retail. And as we can clearly see that in the healthcare arena, close to 55% of the persons do experience burnout. And then you see it across the screen where persons in different arenas, they have burnout, but not as much as the healthcare arena. So in medical professionals, 54% of us would is now at critical levels, and we know why. We've just gone through a lot, especially with COVID. Previous to that, all of the other pandemics, endemics is getting a little tight, and burnout is real. And because of this, we have 2.7 times the risk of a turnover career. And this has cost the healthcare industry $4.6 billion. So what are the causes of burnout? The ones noted are chronic workload. So there's a persistently high demand without adequate resources. And who in this room, in this space, can't attest to that? You go to work and you don't have everything that you need to provide the service well. There may be role conflicts in your role, which there's a contradictory to the expectations and the value misalignment. So you're expected to do X, but you're not given everything that you need to complete this X, or you're told this is your work profile, this is what we expect you to do. That's in the beginning when you take the job. But then in reality, you're expected to do different things. Your roles are added, and not that you may not be competent, but time may not allow for you to complete all of the tasks, all of the tasks. And of course, one person may be wearing trillions of hats, and it's really hard to accomplish everything well when you have so many things going on with you. And last but not least, in the causes of burnout would be our systemic issues. And we know some of them are chronic, like the culture of the organization and structural problems, things that we really cannot do anything about, but we are there and we have to face them. So what are the signs and the symptoms that you need to look out for? So we go with the mental ones. We have the inability to concentrate well, where the thoughts are very negative, and there's decision fatigue, meaning that previously you would have come up with, okay, this is what we do in this case scenario, but now you're like, should I do this? Should I do that? So there's a lag in your ability to make a proper decision. Socially, your signs and symptoms would be withdrawal. There may be lots of conflict with colleagues, or you may go home and have a fight with your family, and isolation, social isolation. Emotionally, if someone is burnt out, they may become detached, they may be cynical and irritable. Physically, fatigue, sleep problems, and headaches. So those are the signs and symptoms that you should watch out for to determine if there is burnout. Now, the Brilliance model. This is where it's sustainable success and fulfillment. And then we go to recovery, where you rebuild your energy, and intervention. So we are addressing the signs of burnout. Let's get a little bit into that. But before we do, we need to recognize the difference between stress versus burnout. So when someone is responding, the stress response, that person over engages because they're anxious. There's heightened emotions. There's an urgency and a hyperactivity. Let's do this. You're not relaxing enough to think about what you're doing, but you're just in the state of moving and doing. And then after a while, there will be loss of energy and anxiety disorders. Whereas burnout, there is disengagement, emotional blurring, There's a feeling of helplessness and apathy. There's loss of motivation, and there's a greater risk for depression when we're talking about burnout. So the mindset, how do you move from negative self-talk? Because this is where we begin to take the actionable steps about addressing our burnout. Firstly is awareness. You have to become aware that something is wrong. What's going on in my mind? You have to be what I call the gatekeeper of your mind, because these thoughts will just keep running. Remember that you are not your thoughts. They will just keep going. So notice your thoughts. And when they come, because you can't stop them, the first step to do is to interrupt. You pause and you challenge. So you ask yourself, is that really true? Is there any truth to this? That's the first question you should ask yourself when you have a negative thought. And the next step would be reframing. So you're going to replace that negative thought with a positive alternative. And practice, because this is what life is really all about. Repeat, repeat, repeat for positive affirmation. So perhaps we give you an example. Let's say a thought comes into your head that, oh, this colleague, he or she, they don't like me. Then you challenge yourself, ask yourself, is this really true? And now you can have a step back and a space to really assess the situation. It may be that that person is going through something of their own, and their response to you was because of what they're going through. And you would have had a totally different mindset if you pause and you stop to think about what's going on before you go down the rabbit hole, as we would say. So that's just a little example of becoming aware, interrupting the thoughts, pausing and reframing, and then you keep reframing because the thoughts are always going to come. So some emotional tools for recharging. So expressive writing, and I love this one a lot. There are some people who don't like journaling, but if you don't like journaling, maybe you can use your device and maybe take voice notes to just get it out there. So you can journal for 10, 15 minutes. There's no limit to it. If you want to do 1 minute, it doesn't matter. And you release your mental burdens. And this is maybe important as well for relationships. You may be having thoughts, negative thoughts about a partner, and it's probably just good to scribble it down instead of, having an argument with that person. You find that in writing that it tempers you, as in you're not as aggressive when you write things out. So the mood changes. There's physical release. Also love this one. So gymming, whether you want to go for a walk, walking distresses you. And some people even recommend an evening walk for 30 minutes to 60 minutes, depending on your schedule. But you should make time for distressing, whether you want to do a morning workout or whatever it is, make time to exercise. Because when we move our bodies, it secretes something called hope hormone, as in love, joy, peace, hope, that hope. And this hope hormone, when it circulates in our body, it increases endorphins, serotonin, and all those good feeling hormones that have the mood back up to where it needs to be. Gratitude practice, although these things are simple in saying them, they really do help and they really do work, and I've practiced them myself. So when you're grumpy, just sit to yourself, what are 3 things that I'm grateful for? And in that moment, you realize that we in this part of the world, we are way above poverty level. We're not thinking that we may not have lunch because there is no money. There will be something, even if it's a fruit, we may be able to afford that in comparison to someone who maybe the guy is cheap right now trying to find their breakfast or lunch, depending on what time of the world they're in. So just be grateful. You at least have one person who loves you. Even if you don't, you do love yourself and you're here for a purpose. So just always be grateful and every day remind yourself that you're here for a purpose and you're going to accomplish them. Now, the joy triggers. Create a list of small actions that bring you joy. So for example, whether it's painting or whether it's walking in a garden, whatever small thing, whether it's listening to a particular song, you need to have these things at your fingertips. So when that mood sets in, that you can just go immediately to that. So if you have a favorite song, keep it close by on your phone or know how to access it. If you want to go home after work and paint, play with your children, whatever it is that brings you joy, just do something daily. It has to be done daily. This has to be done with practice to keep everything nice and flowing. So some practical strategies for work-life balance. And I'm going to slow it down so persons get everything that I'm saying. Set clear boundaries. Not only is this important in work, but it's also important for all of your relationships. Define work hours and stick to them. I know we like to stay back at work and go like, oh, if I don't do this, this will happen. But at the end of the day, I'm sure if the dead can come back and speak to us, they would realize that as soon as they're gone, they were replaced. You are not irreplaceable. So define clear work hours and stick to them. Create physical separation between work and home. So don't take that work home. Make time for it when you're sitting. And I'm sure sometimes we have to take stuff home because we did not manage our time properly at work. This is not always the case, but sometimes it is. Use technology to assist. So AI, I know some people knock it, but it does cut down on the time for doing like presentations, for doing data analysis. Use it if you can. But at the same time, the phones, you don't have to have every app giving you a notification, because that is going to give you hits of dopamine. And after continuous hits of dopamine, you are going to be tired. So take some of the apps off of notification and maybe just leave one or two. You do not have to check your phone every single minute because it's going to distract you from the work that you have to do. And you need to become a master at delegation. Well, it depends on where you work and your level of staff. But I'm sure sometimes that there are colleagues who are willing to assist in certain tasks and you don't have to do everything. So you need to identify the tasks that you know others can do. Practice the art of saying no. And there's a good way of saying no. Sometimes you say to someone, I can assist with that, but it's going to be tomorrow at maybe 3 p.m. So you let persons know, and you're setting boundaries at the same time. You let persons know that I can help you with that, but I have these tasks that I had prior in line to deal with. So you're not telling them, no, I'm not going to do it, and then creating, tension, but find nice ways to say no. And you have to focus on your highest contribution. So what can the organization get from you most? If you have 10 tasks, you may find that 3 of them, although they are tasks, they may not be the very important tasks that the organization needs from you or your family needs from you or whoever needs for you. These may be things that you can put on the back burner, or maybe you don't even really need to do them at all. But set your priorities and stick to it. Do not get distracted. Renew your schedule. So you need to block time for activities that energize you. And I was just reading the other day or listening to an audiobook where it was talking about the nap, the evening nap, the power nap, and the siestas that we would have heard about in Europe. And they do have their place. So sometimes we think we don't have time for these things, but it is making time for these things that would make our life better. Because the studies are now showing that after that 30-minute sleep, that you're so much more energized and focused that you can complete your task as if you were to run through the afternoon under a slump. So that may be something, if there are any bosses listening, so that they maybe need for an afternoon 30-minute power nap for your staff, so that when they are awake, then they're recharged. I know in places like the lab, sometimes you cannot have that break, but sometimes there are lunch breaks that you can take that half an hour power nap. Treat your personal time as non-negotiable. So Don't let it get interrupted. The brain needs time to recover and replenish. Plan regular and you disconnecting vacations. Well, of course, I know that will be depending on budgets, but we can have vacations at home where you're not thinking about work or people are calling you back into work when you're on your vacation. Everyone needs and deserves time to recharge. It's an absolute must. Excuse me. So, small habits, big impact. This is where you have to come to knowing yourself to know what energizes you. So, micro breaks. I'll tell you how this works for me. I come into the office and I have all these ideas in the morning. I may come in a half an hour early and start getting everything done, whether it's in the laptop or on some notes. So I work half an hour. You must stand up and have a break. Sitting is probably one of the worst positions for our human anatomy because it damages the spine. So if you can take those 5 minutes break and get a move around, that is excellent. Not only for your architecture, but also for your mind. Your morning rituals, energize yourself, hydrate. Be mindful. Okay, you go like, okay, so this is what I have planned for today. Top 3 must get accomplished. If it don't, fine, this is the backup plan. No room for distractions when you're doing that work. Nature time. There is research proving that trees, especially pine trees, actually help to rejuvenate the body and the mind. So you need to spend time outdoors daily because this would naturally distress the body and restore your hormones. There's also the need for an early morning sun bath. I'm going to put it like that, but it's not really a sun bath, but your eyes need that penetration from the sun. And that for these reasons, persons living in regions where there's darkness, not necessarily snow, but extreme darkness for long periods of time, there's a decrease as an upset of their circadian rhythm and it causes depression. So we here in this region, we have a sunlight, so exposure for 15 minutes to half an hour, depending on the melanin in your skin, you may need a little bit more if you're more melanated to get that impact. Not only is it good for vitamin D, but it's good for energizing you and for maintaining the circadian rhythm and your hormones. So the mind-body connection, I'm going to mention some techniques for resets. I joke around and I said there are a few persons who have become millionaires just from telling people how to breathe because we do not breathe right. And there's a technique that you can use where you breathe in 4 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4. And before I say breathe in, you're using abdominal breathing. So you're basically pretending that your tummy is a ball and you stick it out. You're filling from bottom up. That's breathing in. And then you hold for 7 seconds. Yes, you can do it with practice. It's not that hard. I'm doing it right now, even speaking. And then you exhale for 8 seconds. If you can't do 4, 7, 8, maybe you can start with 4, 4, 4 until you can, do this technique properly. So it's in through the nose, breathe in, hold, and then out through the mouth. And what that does is that it stimulates the vagus nerve to calm you immediately. So if you're angry and you breathe this way, you do at least 5 cycles of that, you would find that the body would just relax. So in 30 seconds, you can calm down. You don't have to answer anybody in that moment for 30 seconds when you're angry and you practice this breathing technique. Now, nourishing yourself. And I like to talk a lot about nutrition. You need to eat real food. What is real food? Anything that nature made and man did not disturb. So all of the processed foods, the salami, the sausage, all of these things, they need to be out. The sodas, I know that they're accessible. The rice, the pasta, very accessible. And especially in our busy lives, we want to just, grab, go to the drive-through if you have that in your country grab and go. But you are going to have to take time to make preparation for good meals. So even if it's a salad or chicken salad that you make and you bring to work with you, that will be way better than running down to KFC and putting poison in your body. So just some tools to think about. When you're eating, you try to have as many colors on the plate as possible. That way you know you're getting a wide range of nutrients, macronutrients, micronutrients. You hydrate well without overhydrating, because you can overhydrate. And if you do overhydrate, it goes into a state of hyponatremia where you can actually be a little dizzy and a little out of your mind, because that's what it looks like. You limit your caffeine, so no caffeine past 3 p.m. because that will cause insomnia. Move, we spoke about movement. Do it daily, however you can. If you don't go to the gym, you can do YouTube videos at home. If you don't have access to that, which is rare these days, there are steps. You just do a couple rounds of the steps. You're in office, you can stand up, you can move around. However it is, you can implement movements. Don't sit at your desk the entire day. You just do some movement. Every step counts. Every movement counts. There is even a simple technique that I use when I travel if there is no gym, which is 6 squats and some burpees, push up, and then you do the cat pose. And with that, that's good movement. If you do a few rounds of that, you're good to go. Now, sleep. One must prioritize sleep. So you have to get your food in 2 hours before bedtime, because a full stomach is going to keep you up. So you need to have that food down before. Prioritize 7 to 9 hours of sleep. For some persons, 6 hours is enough. You would know your body. But so as long as it's restful sleep, where you're going to rapid eye movement sleep, this is where dreams happen. This is when the brain is washed with the CSF, the cerebrospinal fluid, and you are regenerated. So sleep is very important. I know for us in healthcare that sleep gets disturbed because we do shift work, and it gets really crazy, but we can do the best, do the best that you can with what you have in terms of getting good sleep. So the devices must be placed away from you 1 to 2 hours before you go to bed. The TV as well. If you have a TV in your room, please go home and remove it now, because all of that light is going to affect you, because your retinas, they're saying stimulation, stimulation, stimulation. If you need to get block out curtains, do that. With no light, you do sleep better and everything works better for your sleep, better quality of sleep. So we need to now at this point redefine what success and productivity looks like, because burnout comes because we drive ourselves hard. So success isn't about doing more. It's all about doing what matters. So sometimes even doing less can make things better. And what I've done in the past is a lot of protocols, a lot of what I call one pages, which is like guidance for everybody who would call you on the phone every time something works. And you go and you stick them everywhere that they are so that they don't disturb your work, and you just keep saying the same thing over and over. So you have to create little ways that will make your work easier. You have to choose value over volume. So it's not about doing a lot, it's about doing what matters for you and your organization. You're going to focus on impact rather than the hours you worked. Because a lot of people stay at work for 10 hours and really they could have done everything in 5 hours. But they may be, laughing away here, laughing away there, or spending extra time on tasks that wasn't really necessary. Celebrate your progress and embrace imperfection. You won't get everything right every single day, but you must ensure that your work aligns with your core values. Because sometimes we're doing work and we don't really agree with what's going on, and that's going to impact our productivity. So ensure that there is alignment. Building resilience for sustained brilliance. So now that we know what to do, you have to figure out how to keep it up. So physically, we spoke about your nutrition, your exercise, your sleep. Emotionally, develop emotional awareness and regulation skills. So think for yourself, what regulates me? What would take me from a down mood to good vibes almost immediately? And I gave you one example of music. So how do you cope? Whether it's calling someone and having a brief discussion, that might be one way of venting, but not angrily, of course. Or maybe even if you have to do it angrily for 5 seconds, that may be fine too. Social resilience, cultivate supportive relationships and set healthy boundary for energy drainers. Now, this may be your very good friend for years, but now you don't align. So that person might be calling you on the phone and want to have an hour conversation. Now, they've been your best friend for 20, 30 years. But now you don't have time or the energy to extend to this person for an hour. So you maybe listen for 15 minutes and you explain to them nicely that you really have to go and you will catch up with them. So create your boundaries there without ignoring people, and hopefully everybody gets what they want. But just know that you can't be on the phone for an hour anymore with that person. Spiritual resilience, you need to connect with your purpose, your values, and whatever gives your life meaning. So it sounds romantic, and in a sense, it really is, but it's very important to know your purpose. I always say to persons, a good idea of your purpose would be perhaps asking your parents when you're around 4, 5, 6, 7, what is it that you really wanted to do with your life? Lots of us are in jobs, not me, of course. I'm in love with medicine, maybe a little bit too much in love with medicine. Is this your purpose? And then you would even find that with age, your purpose may actually slightly change and you may lean slightly to something else. Sometimes it's a road and it's not very linear for everyone. It may be a little step up, step like that. And you may find that what you thought was your purpose leads you to something deeper. Whatever it is, this is up to you to find whatever this thing is, your purpose. And do everything that you can, legally, of course, to accomplish this purpose. Because it's only when you are in purpose that you're happy on your inside. Happiness is on the inside, it's not external. No one can do anything, say anything that will bring you happiness. You're only experiencing your perception of what's going on. So you have to make everything come from the inside out. And that is spiritual balance and resilience. So let's do a little talk about case studies about burnout to brilliance. So we have the example of Dr. Sarah Kay, and she's a hospital director. She did a 70-hour work week. She had insomnia, and she was trying to transform the culture of her department. What she did, she implemented team micro breaks with no email weekends, because we know sometimes that there are people who like to send us emails, text messages, and you know that there is an abundance of WhatsApp groups now, and they message you at any hour on the weekend. So some of these things really need to stop so persons can revitalize themselves. So when this was done, it resulted in a 32 reduction in staff turnover and a 28 fewer sick days. So people were energized. They feel like, okay, I can come to work without having to think about work 24 hours a day. Another example, Mark T, and he's a technological executive. He suffered panic attacks and was considering a career change. But he started adopting some morning routines and delegating strategies. And this resulted in a promotion in 8 months. And he restored relationships with his family. I can tell you some of what I did here, like for better health. We implemented, like my secretary, we have the 3rd Saturday off. So because everybody deserves to have some time, whether to go do their hair or their nails. You can't work every single day of the week. Also, what we've done, we have the staggering work times. So there are some days that we work we start work 9:30, we're done at 5, and then there's some days we start 8 a.m., we're done at 3. So what that does in the week is that it gives persons time to do whatever it is they want. They don't feel like if they're a slave, if they have to go to the bank or do whatever, there are days that you can do those things in the afternoon. And of course, there's more employee satisfaction and productivity. So these are just some things for you to think about as to some changes you may be able to make. I know it's limited in some cases, but I'm sure if we sit long enough and hard enough, we'd find ways and strategies to turn things around. So your blueprint, your action plan for change. Firstly, you assess everything. So you complete the burnout inventory. So are you burned out from the definitions that I gave earlier? You're apathetic, no energy, you don't want to go to work. If those things are happening, figure out why. What's causing your burnout? Is it that colleague? Is it something in your diet that's making you tired? Too much sugar, maybe? Just assess all of the different areas that may be contributing to your burnout and identify your top 3 stressors. Most of the times it's we ourselves and not external. So rate your current energy levels from 1 to 10. Next thing you're going to do is choose 3 new micro habits. So what 3 small things, notice that the change is small at first, that you're going to change. Identify boundaries that you wish to establish and choose daily energy practice. So is there a song you want to listen to daily that's going to get you moving and get your mood up there? Do it. Find support. Find an accountability partner, because sometimes we think we can do this thing on our own, and then maybe after a week, then it goes downhill. So get a buddy, and both of you are going to do the same thing. You're going to schedule check-ins. So that person's going to ask you how you've been doing. Are you keeping up with the habits? Are you keeping your gratitude journal? Or even if it's just, you're just saying it out loud, or you're doing all of those things. And if you're so inclined, I'm sure that there are many online communities that you can join for support. And tracking, this is important, because sometimes we think we're doing the thing, but without tracking, you won't be able to monitor your progress. Journal, and this way you can see how things change, how your mindset changes, because the words on the paper, those are going to change. What you say to yourself is also a good indication. So if you started this journey with lots of negative thoughts, then you should gradually see that there are less and less. And lastly, you're going to celebrate your wins. So this is your blueprint, your action plan for change, so that burnout does not occur. Conclusion and next steps. Remember that burnout is reversible. Brilliance is your natural state. So we're all expected to be in good mood and enjoy a good life. It doesn't matter what you've heard. You have to get rid of some of these things you've heard when you were young, that life is hard. Life does not have to be hard. Small steps are going to lead to your transformative change. So in the upcoming 4 weeks, we may have set up a recovery program for those who wish to join in, and begin it every Monday of the week. So this is what I have for you. If you have your questions, we're going to take them at this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davy. That was a very, very insightful presentation on the strategies to recharge and focus. Now, I particularly took a lot of mental notes of some of the stuff that you've mentioned. The causes of burnout, the signs and symptoms that we should be aware of. In the meantime, though, I want to encourage the persons on the session today to drop us any questions that you may have for Dr. Davy. Let's take advantage of her expertise here today. And we would be sure to review them and read them, and hopefully she can provide us with some answers. So please drop it in the Q&A section, and we will read them out shortly. But I think that burnout is something that we all struggle with, especially in our field. And applying the tips that you've given to us, it could really help us to limit the tiredness that we feel on the job or the mental fatigue that we feel. I do have a question while we wait for some of the other Q&A messages to come into the chat. You mentioned some of the things you do to mitigate burnout with your team. I know we have some lab managers, some supervisors on the chat here with us. What advice would you share with the leaders or these managers in this session to support their teams that they may be working with in recognizing and addressing the burnout before it actually becomes a crisis in their organization?
Thank you for that question. Very important question, because everything top down is always a good approach. And most of these managers would have risen from the bottom up. So they understand the job inside out. So the first thing I want them to do is to remember. Remember what it was like, especially when it's time for scheduling. I know sometimes, hands are tied because there's shortage of staff. And we do have to bear that in mind, but also remember that persons are human. So it's all about a willingness to accept what you create, an environment where your staff, they're able to speak to you, because there are lots of managers where you can't say anything to, and there's lack of resources. There are other frustrations. So the best thing that you can do is to create the environment where everyone is comfortable to express their opinion with respect, of course, because we don't want, because we're saying, express yourself, that you're going to go and be disrespectful to your managers either. So that's the first tip. The other one, as mentioned, would be proper scheduling. Make the environment comfortable, because you're there for a very long time. So whether it is that you would set up maybe a water station, maybe allow the persons to take like the 5-minute break that I spoke of. The delegation, just remembering that when you're delegating, not because one person is very good at what they do, that you dump all of the load on them. And this is where training comes in. Sometimes we assume that people know how to complete a particular task. And that's happened a lot, like when I hire secretaries, you would think that the obvious would be obvious, but no, sometimes you have to take time and train lovingly in terms of when you're dealing with customers. So it's those are some of the tips that I would give. The salary, sometimes the managers would not, have any influence with, but when they go to the meetings, maybe they can put in for a higher salary, because everyone would enjoy a bit more money, especially these days. Why not? So it's the little things that will make people comfortable and make them want to come to work. And their ability to speak up in meetings, the delegation aspect. Those are the few things that I think managers can do.
Okay, great. And we have a question from Harry in the chat. Harry is asking, can meditation also be a part of starting your day to obtain mental stability?
Absolutely. Meditation, it doesn't even have to be at the beginning. It could be at any time. Sometimes you're here, you have your 5 minutes. You can put on, I do frequency music. If other persons know about it, you can just access it on YouTube. And there are some that would put you in a meditative state. And I guess that's why the Bible referenced Jesus going off by himself. And I believe he was meditating a lot, because it's a big burden to carry, our jobs. So we do need to meditate. We do need that time by ourselves to recharge. Very, very important.
Great, Harry, I hope that answers your question. We have, sorry.
No, I was going to say, just bear in mind that meditation looks different for different people, because a lot of people, when they hear the term meditation, they think you sit like this and you zone out, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be 2 minutes of mindlessness. And let me explain that. So it's where you're so relaxed that you're not worried, you're not having thoughts about everything that's drowning you. So it's the ability to just disconnect in those few minutes. So your brain would now be in a very relaxed state that everything flows.
Great, great. So we have Zephora asking, if I make pasta at home, is it still whole food?
Well, unless you have a pasta that's full grain, it is processed food. So that's the straight answer for pasta. It's not entirely the best food to eat. And I'm not going to get into gluten and all of that now, but it's not the best food that you can eat. The best things that you can eat off the bat would be vegetables. So consume every day as much veggies as you can because those are where most of the nutrients lie. I'm not telling anybody to go out there and be vegan if that's not your inclination, but I'm just telling you where most nutrients are for the body in plant.
Great. And the second part of her question is, I believe she's referring to the session that you mentioned in the end. She's asking, is the session for free?
Well, yes, if you go to my YouTube, everything is there for free.
Okay, great. And she has a comment. She would like to share how she knows when she's going into a burnout mood. That's when she goes into an autopilot mode. And I think that's very important.
Yes.
So
The apathy.
yes. We have a question from Sariti. I'm sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly, Sariti, but I hope that is the pronunciation. She's asking, can a workplace that has inconsistent structure also be a factor of burnout? And if so, how can you overcome this if you are a new manager?
Tough one, but the short answer is yes, it can create burnout because you would have had persons who would have been perhaps under old management, who would have done things a particular way, and now you as a new manager, especially if you didn't grow up in that culture, everybody would have the tendency to say, who do you think you are coming in here to make changes? So yes, burnout is evident, but it takes time. And once you show competencies, I didn't say leniency, I said competencies in your area, then there are people who would respect you for what you do and eventually join on. And even if they don't, you just go there and do your best. Because sometimes that's all life wants and requires of us, that we go out there and do our best. You would not win everyone. So that's another important thing to note so that you don't get burnout, because not everyone is ever going to like you. And sometimes for no reason.
Is
Are you there?
yes, are you hearing me?
Oh, it was going in and out. Sorry. Yes, apparently
okay.
we're having a tough time today.
Oh, okay, great. And the last question that I would have is, you mentioned having boundaries as part of your presentation. So how would you maintain, or how would you suggest we maintain those boundaries without feeling like we're being guilty or selfish?
Well, first you have to set them. You don't have to be forceful, but do know you always have to repeat your boundaries because people are going to test them. And this is the part that becomes frustrating. But if you vent your frustration, you're doing the complete opposite of what you really wanted to achieve. So you just gently remind persons, remember that, I don't take calls on the weekend. They will make you feel guilty. And then you reinforce the boundary. That's all you have to keep doing, reinforcing the boundary. Again, they would always be pushed back. And especially if you weren't the person who established boundaries to begin with. And that's what I always say, when you're meeting someone for the first time, let them know who you are. So then they're not surprised after, because they go like, oh, he or she has changed. No, you've not changed. You've just come into yourself. And now you're trying to express what you really like. Because it's when we don't get what we like that we become unhappy, irritable, and then this leads to burnout. So don't be afraid or ashamed to say no, that this does not sit with me. My values don't align with this. Again, like I said, you don't have to be aggressive. You just need nice ways of communicating. Like, no, I don't like when you do that. This bothers me in such and such a way. Yeah. You say it like that. Always use the I, not you shouldn't do me this. Or why did you do that? You said I don't feel comfortable. So that person doesn't feel as if you're attacking them. And if you have to do it 70 times 7, you do it.
Noted. That's an important one here. We have another question coming out from Guyana from Mr. Newland Hope. He's asking, at meetings, people don't express themselves. They do so after the fact. Is that a sign of workplace mistrust?
Could be. It could be that they're not confident within themselves to speak up. It could be that maybe there's a culture of people gaslighting them, so they decided to do it that way. Ways to overcome that, maybe a suggestion box, or just making the environment and space comfortable enough for persons to speak up. Because after the meeting, nothing can change, nothing will be achieved. You're just undermining all of the efforts that you really try. So confidence, I think that's one thing. Confidence is seriously lacking in our region. We are afraid to speak out because the person who speaks out, they feel as if they're being, labeled as a troublemaker. But sometimes you really do want to see change and good change. There are some people who want to see change, but not necessarily good change. And it doesn't mean you're a troublemaker. It just means that you want progress. So don't be ashamed of wanting progress. Don't be ashamed of expressing your good ideas. And we have brilliant people in the region. I know that for a fact. But we don't move because we keep everything inside. We think that people would label us as crazy. But believe me, if you read history, it's only the crazy people that got things done and move things. So be crazy, be nice, and express yourself.
Great. And a follow-up question from Mr. Ho. He's asking, what about giving staff a mental health day? What are your thoughts? And I'd also just like to add this particular question is a lot of conversation around it here in the Caribbean as well. So I would really be interested in hearing your thoughts on it.
Well, it's built into some of the jobs in North America where they actually can take a mental health day. I know in aviation, it's not words that you use, mental health, so it depends on your career. I know in public health law, well, no, in public service law, like teachers here, they get a day off to go and do business and they take it maybe as their mental health day. There's nothing wrong with it, but we probably should make it more formal. Yeah. I know in medicine and lab, it's not something that exists, but in some of the other public health areas, they do have it. So why shouldn't we? Why not? Should be more formal.
Yeah, for sure. I think that would be a great conversation for us to start having a bit more frequently because within our field, we see a lot of people experiencing mental breakdowns because of some of the things that they encounter daily within this industry. So I definitely think it's something that we should focus a little more conversation around.
Yes, indeed. So we have to get the lawmakers involved as well.
And Zephora is making a statement. Some companies feel offended when you take a mental health day.
Well, that's when managers don't understand productivity. Because I remember I was already a medical officer, and it was months upon months with on calls every other weekend, and I said, I'm tired. I need a few days vacation. It was refused, and then you found yourself making little mistakes. It wasn't great mistakes to put anyone's life in danger. But I can see, and I did see other people make those mistakes. So we have to remember the industry we're in. We're in the business of saving lives. And we first have to save ourselves. Like you get on the airplane, they always tell you help yourself first. And I think maybe, just maybe, that's one of the reasons why persons don't trust our healthcare system. Because if we look bad, if we sound bad, if we act bad, how can we convince them about good health? That's one of the first things I always thought of. I was never a fat person, but I started exercising because every time I tell someone you should exercise, I'm the hypocrite if I don't. So everything that we preach, we should be practicing for ourselves. That's how I see it.
Agreed. Well, I am searching for more questions, and I believe those are all the questions that we have. Um, yes. Yes, so those are all the questions that we have. Guys, feel free to check out the chat box before we close to fill out the feedback evaluation form. We would love to hear your comments on how you thought the session was. And thank you so much, Dr. Davy, for the lovely and insightful presentation. I think you have given us and equipped us with a lot of tips that we would take home with us today. I might even have to revisit the television that I have in my room and remove it, but that's okay. Thank you so much for the knowledge that you imparted on us, and everyone who joined in on the chat today. Thank you for being a part of the presentation and the session. Please remember to fill out the form. You would receive your certificates of attendance once you have completed it. And remember, we'll be continuing this session tomorrow, so please join us at 11 a.m. again. We'll see you there, and happy Lab Week, everyone. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again, Dr. Davy.